Donald Trump's Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick was on Capitol Hill today, where he was a witness during a Senate hearing. He was grilled on a number of topics, but most notably, he was grilled about his connections to Jeffrey Epstein because his name appears repeatedly within the Epstein files. Now, previously, Howard Lutnick had stated that he had only one interaction with Jeffrey Epstein in 2005 after purchasing a townhouse in New York City from Epstein. Lutnick said that he was invited by Epstein to take a tour of Epstein's house. Lutnick said he saw a massage table in Epstein's house and was so grossed out at Epstein that he had no interactions ever again. Now, in the Epstein files, we know that there are at least 8 meaningful interactions that seem to be referenced between Lutnick and Epstein after 2005, including a trip in 2012 where Lutnick and another family brought their children to Epstein's island in December of 2012, and shortly thereafter, Lutnick entered into a business transaction where he was essentially business partners with Epstein on a deal. So Lutnick had a lot of explaining to do, and to me, his explanations were terrible during this Senate hearing, and he needs to resign immediately. Let me show you what went down when Howard Lutnick arrived at the United States Senate, and you'll see reporters asking him questions before he gave that testimony. Here, play this clip.
People about your interactions with Epstein?
Did you have any financial involvement with Jeffrey Epstein?
Why did you keep contact with Jeffrey Epstein after he pled guilty to sex crimes?
Come on, give us some space. Give us some space.
What do you say to the Democrats calling on for you to resign?
Give us some space.
Mr. Epstein, people of your level in the British government have been forced to resign. Will you resign?
Give us some space. Give us some space.
Why did you keep contact with Jeffrey Epstein after he pled guilty?
I look forward to testifying today.
Did you mischaracterize your relationship with him?
Some space.
Why did you say you found him gross but still kept in contact with him?
What do you say to those who are calling for you to resign now?
Are you willing to speak to Congress about this?
I'm going to speak to Congress right now.
Do you expect to be asked about Epstein?
Now let's go into the testimony given by Howard Lutnick. Democratic Senator Van Hollen asked Lutnick, so did you in fact make that visit to Epstein Island in December of 2012, even though you previously stated you had no contact with Epstein since one interaction in 2005? Play this clip.
Lutnick, I think you understand the root of concern here. It's the way you described very emphatically your first encounter with him in his apartment, said you were disgusted, would never have any contact with him again. Did you, in fact, make the visit to Jeffrey Epstein's private island?
I did have lunch with him as I was on a boat going across on a family vacation. My wife was with me, as were my 4 children and nannies. I had another couple they were there as well with their children, and we had lunch on the island. That is true, for an hour, and we left with all of my children, with my nannies and my wife, all together. We were on family vacation. We were not apart. To suggest there was anything untoward about that in 2012, I don't recall why we did it, but
Mr. Secretary, again, as I said, there's
more cross-examination here from Democratic Senator Van Hollen. Why did the Epstein files show you coordinating meetings with Epstein? Here, play this clip.
Secretary Lutnick, as I said in my opening statement, you led people to believe that you had cut off all contact with Jeffrey Epstein after the 2005 encounter you and your wife had in his apartment. But as I'm sure you know, the Epstein files show a very different record of interaction. Why did the Epstein files show you coordinating a meeting and planning a visit with Jeffrey Epstein on his private island in December 2012?
Thank you for the question. I'm glad to be here to make it clear that I met Jeffrey Epstein when I moved to a house next door to him in New York, right? And I met him then. Over the next 14 years, I met him 2 other times that I can recall. 2 times. And that is none for 6 years. So 6 years later, I met him. And then a year and a half after that, I met him, and never again. Probably the total, and you've seen all of these documents, of these millions and millions of documents, there may be 10 emails connecting me with him, probably about 10 emails connecting me with him over a 14-year period. I did not have any relationship with him. I barely had anything to do with that person. Okay?
Secretary Lutnick.
And more questions from Democratic Senator Van Hollen here. There's reference in the Epstein files to exchanging nannies with Jeffrey Epstein. What do you know about this nanny exchange, Howard Lutnick? Here, play this clip.
Questions I have before we close. One is just to follow up on one of your responses with respect to the Epstein files, specifically the visit you and your family took to Epstein's private island in 2012. And I think you also said you went on his yacht. Is that right? Or boat? No.
No.
Okay.
They didn't say that.
At that time, I think you mentioned that you were accompanied by your wife and kids and nannies. My question is, do you know whether the nanny that you had on that trip was the same nanny that Jeffrey Epstein expressed interest in meeting?
No, I have no idea about that whole thing. I mean, I don't recall it having anything to do with me, and I don't know that.
It's
no.
just, this guy was a convicted sex offender and obviously not a great place for kids and nannies. Was Ghislaine Maxwell on the island at that time?
No.
And then Senator Van Hollen asks Lutnick, so when you visited the Epstein Island, did you see anything inappropriate when you brought your children to the island where sex trafficking of children was taking place with a child sex trafficker? Here, play this clip.
The fact that you believe that you misled the country and the Congress based on your earlier statements, suggesting that you cut off all contact when in fact you had not. When you visited the private island, did you see anything inappropriate during that visit?
The only thing I saw with my wife and my children and the other couple and their children was staff who worked for Mr. Epstein on that island.
And you realize that, this visit took place after he'd been convicted, right? I mean, you made a very big point of saying that you sensed that this was a bad person in 2005. And then, of course, in 2008, he was convicted of soliciting prostitution of a minor. And yet you went and had this trip and other interactions. Did you have a dinner in Epstein's New York City home in 2011?
No.
So the information that suggests that there was a dinner with Woody Allen and Woody Allen's spouse at the Epstein residence, there's nothing to that. Is that right?
I actually don't know what you're referring to. There was, look, I looked through the millions of documents for my name, just like everybody else. Yeah. And what I found was there was a document that says that I had a meeting with him on in May, I think, for an hour at 5 o'clock.
Okay.
Not dinner or otherwise, for an hour at 5 o'clock.
All right.
And then you have Howard Lutnick here responding to additional questioning, saying, to the best of my memory, I met him just one time and there was like 3 other interactions. He is a liar and he needs to go immediately. Watch this as he answers more questions. Play this clip.
Last, a closing comment, if I might, Mr. Secretary. Senator Van Hollen asked about your engagements with your former neighbor, Mr. Epstein. I was encouraged to see your declaration that in 2005, you concluded he was a disgusting man with whom you should have no contact. I wish many others reached that conclusion upon meeting him. But it troubles me that you took your family to lunch on his island, that you had appointments with him. Please disclose everything. Put this to rest, because this is an issue of grave concern to my constituents. President Trump ran on releasing the Epstein files. You said casually, well, I looked at my name and how it appeared in them, as does everyone. No, everyone isn't worried about their names being in the Epstein files. I know he was your neighbor. That was a coincidence. But please disclose everything that's relevant here so that we have a chance to work together and move on.
To the best of my memory, I met him when he moved next door to me, and I met him 2 other times in 14 years, none within 6 years of that first meeting, and then a year and a half later, and none thereafter. And in the presence of my wife, and as Senator Van Hollen said, under no circumstances is there a single word that I've done anything remotely wrong in any possible regard. I did not have anything you could call a relationship, anything you could call an acquaintance. I literally met him 3 times over 14 years with widespread in between. That's all I can remember. That's all there is in the documents. I didn't look through the documents with any fear whatsoever because I know and my wife knows that I have done absolutely nothing wrong in any possible regard.
Well, thank you for answering our questions today.
Then you had Senator Merkley read out a timeline of Lutnick's relationship with Epstein. Let's play this clip right here.
The reason people are bothered is because last year you said you'd cut off all contact, but there are 8 incidences of interaction in the files after 2005. In 2009, you wanted to speak with Epstein. You asked for his phone number. In 2011, there was the appointment for drinks. In 2012, you were planning a trip to the private island with your family. That sounds like, somebody you know well enough to call up and say, let's get our families together or let's visit each other. In 2013, the exchange of information about an article relating to intellectual property and gambling, topics that you have an interest in. You both signed up for an investment. It's not clear if you had conversations about that same investment, but you were neighbors. You made the same investment, maybe not. And then in 15, Mr. Paulson, in 2017, Mr. John Paulson wrote to Epstein saying, hey, why don't you contribute to this event? You're a close friend of the Lutnicks, and it's honoring Lutnick. Again, may not have been you personally involved in that, but I know from many events, when people are raising money, they say, who all do you know that might be contribute if I'm honored? And one supplies a list. And so I guess collectively, it suggests that when you said you cut off all contact in 2005, that was probably not a full and complete.
Now, again, just to remind you what Howard Lutnick had previously said, this is when he sat down with the New York Post last year. A reporter by the name of Miranda Devine asked him, well, it's interesting that Epstein was your neighbor in 2005. So what were your interactions with him like? This is what Lutnick has been publicly saying before his testimony today about Epstein. Watch this interview with the New York Post so you can see what a liar this guy is. And he lies about everything and about the most horrific things. Play this clip.
He was your neighbor for 10 years. How well did you know him?
All right. So we are in number 11. And he lives in number 9.
Right.
So, we buy our house, and our house is pigeons and mice.
Right.
Okay. It was derelict.
Right.
So we rebuild our house. We move in 2005. Okay. Jeffrey Epstein is arrested in like 08, I think, or something like that.
Right.
So knock on the door. His assistant on like a Saturday says, Mr. Epstein, your neighbor would like to invite you over for coffee. So my wife and I go next door. We walk the 7 steps.
Yes.
Right to the next house for coffee. We share a wall.
Right.
Right. So it's in New York City. So he invites us in. We have coffee in this, and he says, do you want a tour? We said, great.
Interesting.
He's got a really big house.
Every room you went into?
He's got, well, I'll tell you. So his house is like super big, really wide. And, so he gives me a tour in the living room, big living room. And then across from it is double doors. I assume it's the dining room.
Yeah.
And he opens the doors and there's a massage table in the middle of the room.
Ooh.
And candles all around and stuff. So I ask very insightful, cutting questions. I say to him, massage table in the middle of your house? How often do you have a massage? And he says, every day. And then he gets weirdly close to me.
Ooh.
And he says, and the right kind of massage.
Ooh.
Now my wife is standing here. So she looks at me and I look at her and we say, I'm sorry. We have to go. And we left. And in the 6 or 8 steps it takes to get from his house to my house, my wife and I decided that I will never be in the room with that disgusting person ever again.
Oh,
So
yeah.
I was never in the room with him socially, for business, or even philanthropy. If that guy was there, I wasn't going because he's gross.
And then here's what Lutnick said about Epstein as well. That, look, the guy's gross. He's a gross person. That's why I didn't want to be around him. So Miranda Devine from the New York Post asks, so then how come people like Bill Gates and all these other people wanted to be around him? Here, play this clip.
I mean, that's an incredible story that you could pick up that he was a pervert.
It's gross. The guy's gross. Right with my wife. He's gross. The guy's gross. This was not, the deep nuance of Howard Lutnick. This guy's gross.
Right. So how come Bill Gates and all these other people could hang around him and not see what you saw? Or did they see it and ignore it? Or
no, they participated.
Right.
That's what his MO was, get a massage, get a massage. And what happened in that massage room, I assume was on video. This guy was the greatest blackmailer ever. Blackmailed people. That's how he had money. So
what happened to those videos? Why is there now such a dearth of information when, Donald Trump's people are running the FBI and the DOJ?
I assume way back when, they traded those videos in exchange for him getting that 18-month sentence, which allowed him to have visits and be out of jail. I mean, he's a serial sex offender. How could he get 18 months and be able to go to his office during the day and have visitors and stuff? It must have been a trade. So my assumption, I have no knowledge, but my assumption is there was a trade for the videos because there were people on those videos.
And have you talked to Donald Trump about this and shared your theory?
No, I mean, he knows the story.
Right.
But my story, that, I was one and done with the guy. He knows that story, but that's it.
And now I'll just share with you how Lutnick basically, sucks up to Donald Trump, because this is just the most pathetic regime right now of individuals covering up child sex trafficking. So here's what Lutnick says when he gives his media appearances on state regime media. He'll go on state regime media, Fox, and he'll be asked, so what's the atmosphere like in the room when you're with Donald Trump? And Lutnick says, you feel the power. You feel the power of the man. Play this clip.
I mean, we see video of you sitting across from your Chinese counterparts. I know there's a lot of respect at the table, but are you kind of kicking these guys a little bit? Maybe just a little bit? I mean, what's the atmosphere in that room?
Well, look, the atmosphere in the room is that you feel the power of your man. The president's power, the guy on your side of the table, he's washing all over you. So when he is strong and making the points, you feel good and we're up. So our president is really the strongest, most confident, able to deliver for the American people. And that's why it's so much fun to be on our side of the table. Now, President Xi holds his own, and there's a guy who just doesn't smile much. He is a strong character, and that's the president likes to say, this is a strong character. But I tell you what, the president of the United States holds his own, more than holds his own. He holds the room. He is the most important leader in the world. And we felt it everywhere we went, in Japan, in Korea, and then with President Xi. It is fantastic to have Donald Trump be our president, the way he brings respect and he brings the power of our economy everywhere in the world so he can deliver jobs to the American people.
And here's just another example where he's like, and Donald Trump wears me out. he's so strong. He wears me out. Here, play this clip.
And did he let you sleep on the ride home on Air Force One?
I slept for an hour. I did. I slept for one. I slept for 1 hour. He is the strongest. He is the strongest human being that I know. I mean, you know, he can wear me out, and I tell you, I've got plenty of energy, and he just works and works and works. It is a pleasure to be.
Well, go get some sleep, Secretary. I think you guys need it. Great job over there, and this fight with China continues. It's a battle. Thank you.
There you have it, folks. That's what went down on Capitol. I'll show you one more clip. How about I show you? There was other questions about other topics. This was a question from Republican Senator Kennedy from Louisiana, just so you can see a question on another topic that went down as well. Here, play this clip.
Mr. Secretary, the Census Bureau is under your jurisdiction, is it not?
Yes, it is.
And the Census Bureau is in charge of defining what it means to be poor or in poverty in America. Is that correct?
I think it does economic analysis for America.
But it also defines poverty level, does it not?
I don't know if it's the defining.
Well, you need to look, because it does.
Okay.
If you know, this isn't a quiz, if you know, what's the percentage of Americans who live at or below the poverty level?
I don't know the percentage.
Okay. It's around 11%. It's been constant.
There you have it, folks. Let me know what you think. Hit subscribe. Let's get to 6 million subscribers, and let me know, do you think he needs to resign?
Want to stay plugged in? Become a subscriber to our Substack at MeidasPlus.com. You'll get daily recaps from Ron Filipkowski, ad-free episodes of our podcast, and more exclusive content only available at MeidasPlus.com.